What up, y'all? It's your boy Demo. Get it, go. Go on, rock it low. Your boy Demo. It's your boy Demo. And I got some surprising news, man. Charlotte, my city. I was born and raised in. Where my family is at. People I love had a serial killer. Now, they might still have, some killers now, but I'm talking about a real serial killer, like on some Ted Bundy type junk. You know what I'm saying? I never knew that. I never knew that back in the day. Uh, I got the story for y'all. We're gonna get into it a little bit, but I just want to let you know if you have any opinions, comments about anything I say or do, please leave it in the comments. And if y'all like or don't like the video, please subscribe to the channel and leave a message, a comment, and we can get into it a little later. I'll reply back. And without further ado, let's get into Charlotte's serial killer.
Between 1992 and 1994, in Charlotte, North Carolina, 9 young black women were raped and murdered. The first murder took place on June 15, 1992. At that time, the killer only casually cleaned up the crime scene. However, as time went by, the brutality of the murders escalated, including but not limited to necrophilia and arson to burn the crime scene. In those days, this series of events sparked outrage among the local black community, especially since these murders happened in their place. The inability to crack the case was not due to the killer's sophisticated modus operandi, but rather because, at that time, Charlotte had a population of 400,000 residents, yet only 7 full-time investigators. Despite their dedication, determination, and professionalism in their work, because the killer's methods were so chaotic.
But that number has totally changed now. It's way more than some 400,000. It's like it's too many people. The way that the I-85 be backed up, man, that's about 400,000 right there. But I just want to say that. Let's keep going, y'all.
These murders were not connected for a long period of time. It was not until the local police, under immense pressure, had no choice but to seek assistance from the FBI. On June 19, 1992, the manager of the Biangles contacted a woman named Kathy, claiming that her sister Carolyn had not shown up for work for several days and he hoped she could check on what had happened to her. Hearing this, Kathy rushed to her sister's apartment. However, upon entering the apartment, Carolyn was not home and there were no signs of violence in the room. So Kathy left a note expressing the concerns of the manager and herself. In addition, Kathy contacted her sister's roommate, Sadie, to inquire about her whereabouts. But Sadie was also unaware of her location, and it was not until Kathy contacted her that she realized Carolyn had not been in touch for over 48 hours. So Kathy and Sadie combined their information and together reported their suspicions to the police. The investigator who took on this case was named Anthony. He first located the manager and learned that the last time he had seen Carolyn was on the evening of June 15th, when she had just finished work and asked him if he could change a $10 bill into coins for her because she needed to do some laundry at the laundromat. The person who drove Carolyn home was her relative Robert, who stated that Carolyn had shown no strange behavior when he dropped her off. Later on, Anthony searched the apartment. As a detail-oriented investigator, contrary to Kathy's statements, he believed that the apartment appeared to have been the scene of a struggle. There were signs that the furniture had been rearranged, and Caroline's bedsheet was missing. It was neither in the laundry basket filled with clothes nor in any corner of the room. However, despite Anthony's continued search for Carolyn, all leads regarding her turned up empty. In the end, Carolyn Love was classified as a missing person, becoming one of the many cases of missing individuals. 8 months later, on February 19, 1993, Sylvia returned home from work to prepare dinner for herself and her teenage daughter, Sharon Nance.
Hold on.
Strangely, Sharon was not home. She was supposed to have returned in the morning and her wallet and coat were still in the dining room. Normally, Sharon would never leave without her wallet, nor would she forget to wear her coat in the cold spring. So, Sylvia first called Sharon's boyfriend, Kirkpatrick, and learned that he had not seen Sharon all day. She then called the restaurant where Sharon worked part-time, but the staff informed her that Sharon was not on the schedule for that evening. The news that Sharon was neither with Kirkpatrick nor at her part-time job hit Sylvia like two hammers to the head, leaving her in a state of panic. Upon receiving Sylvia's call again, Kirkpatrick immediately drove to her house, trying to comfort her. After a few words of reassurance, Kirkpatrick began to search the house for clues, hoping to figure out where Sharon might have gone. He first
Okay.
walked into the downstairs bathroom, where the carpet was damp and the shower curtain was not properly closed. Through the translucent curtain, Kirkpatrick noticed what seemed to be a dark shape in the bathtub. He yanked the curtain open and let out a scream, because there was Sharon, lying naked in the bathtub with her head submerged underwater and her lifeless eyes staring upward.
All right, so they done discovered Sharon. Sharon was in the bathtub, dead, deceased, unalive. I don't want to get in trouble, but Sharon was found in the bathroom, in a bathtub, unalive. Let's find out why.
Later, Sharon was pronounced dead. After forensic examination, it was revealed that her skull had suffered lacerations and bruises from a blunt force trauma. However,
Mm.
this was not the cause of Sharon's death. There were
Oh
ligature
wait,
marks on her neck and small bleeding spots on her face, lips, and throat, indicating that she had been strangled to death. The instrument used was likely a rope or a belt. Despite the police's extensive efforts, the case remained unsolved. They questioned Sharon's colleagues, friends, and acquaintances, but failed to identify any suspects or determine a motive for the crime. Audrey Spain, a 24-year-old employee at Taco Bell, was known for her
mm.
diligence. She rarely missed a workday. Therefore, when she failed to show up for 2 consecutive days on June 23rd and 24th, her manager became concerned that something had happened to her. In order to check if she was ill, he first called her but only got her voicemail. He then tried to contact her sister, but again, there was no response. After 2 unsuccessful attempts to reach her, he decided to visit Audrey's apartment in person. Upon arriving at the building, he noticed that Audrey's car was still parked in the lot, so he approached the building's caretaker and requested access to Audrey's.
Hey y'all, look y'all. I did some research on it, and he used to work at the Taco Bell off of Central, right next to the Burger King and the QT. The Taco Bell that was there, I guess back in the day. I don't know if it had the Burger King next to it or not, but it was the Taco Bell off of Central. That's the one. And he is the manager, by the way. Let's keep going.
Apartment to check on her, as she had been out of contact for 2 days. As the caretaker entered Audrey's apartment, the worst-case scenario unfolded. Audrey was found naked and lifeless on her bed, her eyes protruding and her neck wrapped with some clothing. It was clear that the young woman had died. Carolyn, Sharon, and Audrey, 3 cases of disappearance and 2 nearly identical murder cases, all occurring within just a few months of each other. Unfortunately,
I gotta ask my aunt, dude. She know any of them because that was around the time she was out here and she was working in fast food restaurants. I don't know if she worked at Taco Bell, but I think he did multiple fast food restaurant workers. A serial killer. Gotta ask my aunt. Anyway, let's keep going.
none of the 3 cases had any witnesses stepping forward to claim they had seen someone acting suspiciously. No one, not even the police or the media, had realized the existence of a serial killer. Moreover, the investigations into their cases gradually cooled down. This was because the statistics for Charlotte in 1993 showed that there were over 51,000 criminal incidents, with
Oh,
9,100 classified as violent crimes, including
mm,
87 murders, 350 rapes, over 2,000 sexual assaults, and nearly 6,000 cases of battery. As a result, the local police had to focus on those cases that might be solvable, rather than the 3 seemingly unsolvable ones, especially
oh,
since they had not been connected. Valencia Jumper, a 21-year-old female college student from South Carolina, worked part-time in a grocery store and a clothing store to pay for her tuition. In
oh,
August 1993, her life completely vanished. On the evening of the 9th, Valencia's boyfriend, Douglas, smelled something burning when he arrived at Valencia's apartment. There were also wisps of black smoke seeping through the gaps in the door. Fearing that Valencia might be hurt, Douglas tried to open the door, but it was locked. So he immediately knocked on the door of the neighbor, asking them to call the fire department. After the firefighters arrived and chopped open Valencia's door with an axe, one of them saw a girl lying in one of the bedrooms, severely burned. The cause of the apartment fire was later attributed to a pot on the kitchen stove, and the girl was identified as Valencia, whose body had been charred. The coroner concluded that Valencia had died of burns, with no other external factors involved. In fact, the case was initially ruled as an accident until the killer was arrested and Valencia's body was re-examined. The coroner then revised his diagnosis and changed her cause of death to strangulation. The next victim was Michelle. Her manner of death had slight distinctions from the
Dang,
previous
bro. Oh my
victims.
God.
While the earlier
Yo, dude is out here. And I told you it was on some Ted Bundy type junk. Cause it's just like six six females already. Hey, everybody, not just females, but everybody be careful, be vigilant, be aware of your surroundings, who you're dealing with, who you're working around, who you chilling with, because it can be anybody. It can be your family, it can be your friends, it can be your co-worker. Somebody want to take you out for no reason at all. Females, males, anybody. Just be careful, be vigilant, man, and stay on your 10, you know? It's crazy. Let's keep going, y'all.
victims were strangled, Michelle was not only strangled but also stabbed multiple times, an ordinary kitchen knife piercing her back. Her body was discovered by her two young sons, aged 3 and 1, respectively. No one saw or heard the attacker. Perhaps the two children did see the attacker and were aware of his presence, but they could not describe his appearance or remember his voice. The coroner's autopsy revealed that the blade had penetrated the upper left side of Michelle's back, just below the shoulder blade, causing fatal injuries to the heart and lungs. Also, she had been sexually assaulted. The successive murders of black women, all occurring in the local minority community, incited extreme outrage among the black residents. They interpreted the police department's lack of progress as
Yeah.
racial discrimination. They believed that the police failed to solve these murders because the victims were black and the perpetrator was white. They claimed that local
Huh.
politicians and police were indifferent to the plight of the black
It's your
community.
own people,
They
man. It's
also
your
could
own
not
time.
understand why the police could not compare the fingerprints found at the crime scenes with those of criminals on file. In response to these concerns, the police held an emergency press conference, promising to achieve results as soon as possible and stating that their investigation would not cease but would continue. Moreover, a black police officer named Gary was compelled to step forward to explain why they had not apprehended the killer. Evidently, Gary had no answers. He could not explain anything. He stated that, as a black man, he could not gain the understanding of his fellow community members. People in the community despised
Wow.
him, and he had become a scapegoat.
Wow.
February 20th, 1994,
That's crazy,
Vanessa's
man.
mother, Barbara, went to her daughter's residence as usual to pick up her grandson to play at her house. 25-year-old Vanessa was an employee at a medical center. Due to her job, she sometimes had to work overtime, so she often had to leave her child in the care of her mother. Normally, Vanessa would be waiting at the door before Barbara even reached.
Yo, my dude was catching them everywhere. I thought it was just fast food restaurants, hospital, restaurants, everywhere. That's crazy, man. And then the officer, the black officer, talking about he don't understand the community. Man, if you don't, man, look. And then listen, I had to take it back. My bad, y'all. But anyway, I know we see a lot of black on white crime, but we see a lot of our own people taking out our own people, and that's what this is, unfortunately. And everybody thought it was a racial thing, and it ended up being uh, actually one of our own taking out black women. So just be aware of everybody. I don't care who it is, black, white, Chinese, Indian, whatever. Be aware, be vigilant. Let's keep going, y'all. I had to take it back a little bit because I forgot my place, but it ain't that far from where it was.
Manner of death had slight distinctions from the previous victims. While the earlier victims were strangled, Michelle was not only strangled but also stabbed multiple times, an ordinary kitchen knife piercing her back. Her body was discovered by her two young sons, aged 3 and 1, respectively. No
Yeah,
one
we
saw or
already
heard
heard
the
this part,
attacker.
y'all.
Perhaps the two children did see the attacker and were aware of his presence, but they could not describe his appearance or remember his voice. The coroner's autopsy revealed that the blade had penetrated the upper left side of Michelle's back, just below the shoulder blade, causing fatal injuries to the heart and lungs. Also, she had been sexually assaulted. The successive murders of black women, all occurring in the local minority community, incited extreme outrage among the black residents. They interpreted the police department's lack of progress as racial discrimination. They believed that the police failed to solve these murders because the victims were black and the perpetrator was white. They claimed that local politicians and police were indifferent to the plight of the black community. They also could not understand why the police could not compare the fingerprints found at the crime scenes with those of criminals on file. In response to these concerns, the police held an emergency press conference, promising to achieve results as soon as possible and stating that their investigation would not cease but would continue. Moreover, a black police officer named Gary was compelled to step forward to explain why they had not apprehended the killer. Evidently, Gary had no answers. He could not explain anything. He stated that, as a black man, he could not gain the understanding of his fellow community members. People in the community despised him, and he had become a scapegoat. February
Wow.
20th, 1994, Vanessa's mother, Barbara, went to her daughter's residence as usual to pick up her grandson to play at her house. 25-year-old Vanessa was an employee at a medical center. Due to her job, she sometimes had to work overtime, so she often had to leave her child in the care of her mother. Normally, Vanessa would be waiting at the door before Barbara even reached the entrance of her house. But this time, although Vanessa's child was sleeping on the sofa, she herself had vanished. Barbara searched the entire house, the kitchen, bathroom, and living room. In the end, in the bedroom, she found a quilt on the bed, seemingly wrapped around something. When Barbara lifted the quilt, she discovered her daughter, Vanessa, lying on the bed in a contorted position, with a pillowcase tightly wrapped around her neck. In early 1994, the Charlotte police sought the assistance of the FBI to identify the killer they were looking for. Meanwhile, Gary, the black police officer, was working hard to connect the loose dots. He and his
Come
team
on, Gary. Where
interrogated
you
local
at,
suspects
Gary?
who had a history of violence and could move about the black community without drawing attention. They also
Where
reconnected with
Gary
the
at, man?
families and friends of all the victims because perhaps there truly was a single clue that connected all the victims, but they just hadn't found that crucial piece of evidence yet. In March 1994, the case finally saw a breakthrough. Between March 8th and 11th, 3 murders occurred. On March 9th, Betty, an employee at the restaurant where Carolyn had once worked, did not show up for work for 2 consecutive days. The restaurant manager, who had personally experienced Caroline's disappearance, became extremely cautious. He first called Betty, but there was no change in the outcome. Betty did not answer. So he immediately called the police. Subsequently, the police arrived at Betty's apartment and discovered her body. She was lying face down on the mattress, strangled with a towel, and had been dead for over 24 hours.
This is
However, this
crazy. Bro,
time, the killer left
bro
some
is
clues.
going in.
Unlike the previous victims, Betty's apartment had clearly been ransacked. Her television and VCR were missing, and her car, which had been parked in the lot, was also gone. In response, the investigators immediately notified other departments to check for cars on the road and to visit local pawn shops to see if anyone had pawned Betty's items. However, before anyone had time to feel sorrow and anger for Betty, a phone call came into the police. The caller was a man who claimed that his girlfriend, Brandy, was dead in her apartment. The investigators from the local police department had just arrived at the location reported by the man when they were astonished to find that Brandy's room was in the same apartment building as Betty's. Moreover, the crime scene of this murder was even more chaotic because the killer had also attacked a baby. The man who called the police, Vinis, lived with Brandy in the same room. He had just finished his night shift and hurried home. However, as soon as he arrived, he found the room in disarray. His girlfriend was lying on the bed, strangled with a towel, and their 10-month-old child was also on the bed with a towel around its
Wow.
neck.
Wow.
Fortunately, the baby did not die on the spot. Meanwhile, the police obtained the most crucial clue. They put together all the statements from the families and friends of the victims they had interviewed and came up with a name that had connections to all the victims. Henry Louis Wallace. Sharon and Audrey had worked for the same manager,
God
who was
almighty, Henry.
Henry. Valencia was a friend of Henry's sister. Michelle frequently dined at the restaurant where Henry worked. Vanessa was the sister of Henry's ex-girlfriend. Betty was a friend of Henry's current girlfriend. Venus was also a friend of Henry. And the long-missing Carolyn had been the roommate of Henry's current girlfriend. Clearly, Henry was the only individual who had contact with all the victims. Reviewing all the murders, the victims had hardly any defenses. Their deaths occurred in their homes, with no obvious signs of forced entry. All these signs pointed to one thing: the attacker was someone they knew. Henry fit this condition perfectly. However, to arrest Henry, the police needed to find evidence of his guilt. Fortunately, soon after, Betty's car was found. Upon examination, investigators
It
successfully
be your
discovered
own
Henry's
people, man.
fingerprints
It
in the
be your
trunk of the
own
car.
people.
On the evening of March 11th, the police kept Henry's residence under surveillance in an attempt to arrest him. However, Henry seemed to sense something and did not go home. It was not until around 5 in the afternoon the next day that the police arrested him at a friend's house. The officers present at the time stated that Henry was sober when he was arrested. He was very calm and composed and
Now look at this guy. Look at him. You would never think a dude like this. I mean, kind of. I ain't okay. A little bit. You might, but just just given on the surface level, you would never think this guy would be that type of guy. And he's a manager and a friend and a cousin and an in-law and an ex and all this to people. Man, he looked like sort of a square dude. You know, excuse me. But those now those be the ones I ain't even gonna hold you. They do. But I'm just saying that is crazy. But I took out like 10 females. He ain't take out no dudes though, you know. He knew better than that. I mean, look at him, but still, it's crazy. Be your own people though. Let's keep going. Let's finish this up, y'all.
did not offer any resistance. As Henry was taken interrogation room, another body was discovered in Charlotte. Deborah, age 35, was found dead. She had been
God
sexually
almighty.
assaulted, beaten, stabbed, and strangled. She was also a friend of Henry. During the interrogation, when asked by the police if he knew the reason for his arrest, Henry initially only mentioned his charges related to theft. After several hours of continuous questioning, he admitted to killing all 9 women. In addition, he confessed to killing a sex worker and hiding her body in a remote place not far from where he had disposed of Caroline's body. Henry also revealed the details and thoughts behind his murders of those women. He stated that although he had robbed most of the victims before killing them, his true motive was not robbery but sexual assault. He wanted to act out his fantasies of power and control, which is why he killed them. In the following weeks, the police verified Henry's statements and found evidence one by one. They also located the long-missing Carolyn. Finally, on April 4, 1994, Henry was formally charged with 9 counts of murder and a series of other offenses, including rape,
Gone, bro,
sexual crimes,
gone. He's still
and
in there.
assault.
He might be
Henry,
dead.
age 29, appeared to be an extremely amiable individual. Standing at 6 feet tall and
Ain't no way that now 29. Now he might be 39. He ain't no 29. Look at now he look totally different. I believe it now. Looking at this, I believe it. I believe it now. Look, and he ain't no way that's 29. But this is back in the day. This is this time.
talkative, positive, and always wore a smile. No one could have imagined that such a person would become a serial killer. According to a social background investigation, Henry had grown up in a dysfunctional environment from a young age. Born on November 4, 1965, in South Carolina, his father was a married high school teacher, and his mother was a pitiable woman who had been deceived. She had lost her own mother at a young age, and her father had abandoned her early on. When she became pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth to 2 children, the man by her side was already married. Consequently, Henry's mother harbored a deep resentment towards life, which she vented on Henry through violence and emotional abuse. As the only breadwinner in the family, Henry's mother had to work long hours to pay the bills. However, working meant she could not take care of the children, so her discipline became extremely strict. Whenever one of the children made a mistake, she would take out a stick and have the other child whip the offender's bottom. During high school, despite his rather uneventful life and less than ideal grades, Henry was well liked by his classmates, and his teachers considered him a well-behaved student. Since his mother did not allow him to join the football team, he became a cheerleader instead. Even though he was the only male cheerleader, no one ridiculed him. On the contrary, he received encouragement from everyone. Perhaps Henry's ability to befriend and get close to those victims was one of the most important aspects of his socializing methods. Later, Henry joined a small radio station, and it was evident that he won the affection of most listeners. Many people appreciated his humor. If he had continued in the broadcasting industry, his life would have taken a completely different path. However, he was fired for stealing CDs. Later, unable to attend college, Henry enlisted in the United States Navy Reserve in December 1984 and went to Florida
Uh,
for basic training. Henry served in the Navy for 8 years and was described as an outstanding sailor. During his service, he married a girl named Moretta, a girl he had been dating since sophomore year of high school. However, Moretta already had a daughter before they got married. Although Henry could accept the existence of this daughter, he longed for a child of his own, but Moretta refused to have more children. Over time, the rift in Henry and Moretta's relationship grew larger, and they eventually ended their relationship in 1992. That year, Henry also concluded his naval
when I was
career.
born.
Due to an incident of trespassing, he was asked to leave the military. Henry, who had lost both his marriage and job, moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where his mother and sister lived. There, he dated other women and fathered a daughter. However, despite becoming a father, Henry still harbored feelings for his ex-wife, Moretta. It is well known, once humans obtain something, they often yearn intensely for what they once had but lost. For example, a person who has earned a lot of money may no longer value it, and instead long for family bonds and love. In Henry's case, after having his own biological daughter, he began to yearn for his lost love. But his failed life had gradually broken his spirit. He had started using drugs at an early age. Initially, he could trade work for drugs, but as time went by, his drug habit worsened. He gave up his job and began robbing others to fund his drug use, which eventually led to his career as a killer. On January 7, 1997, Henry was convicted of 9 murders. 3 weeks later, he was sentenced to death. Later, Henry made a statement to the victims' families. These women, your daughters, mothers, sisters, or loved ones, did not deserve what they went through. They did nothing to make me think they deserved to die. However, after that, Henry continuously tried to overturn his death sentence, claiming that his confession was coerced. Nevertheless, his subsequent appeals were all rejected, and Henry remains on death row, awaiting his
Wow.
execution.
Yep, guys, that's it for today. It's your boy Demo. Y'all make sure y'all like and subscribe to the channel and comment. It's a crazy story. Charlotte, North Carolina serial killer. If y'all new, tell me what y'all think about it. Y'all opinions about the video. Uh, it's your boy Demo with the Black Sheep channel, SH33P. Make sure y'all subscribe. I'm out.